Hello folks, it's Matsimus here with you today. Thanks for joining me, I really appreciate it. So we're talking about some more tank related information today. And as of recently, I've been getting a lot of questions in regards to what tank's my favourite, what tank's better than this tank. Now, as you are all mostly aware, if you're new to my channel, you may not be, I don't tend to side along which tank is better than another. It's just really not my premise of my channel. I just don't side towards what's the top 10 tanks in the world, etc, etc. Of course, I am going to have my favourite vehicle that I would rely upon, and that would be the Challenger 2. And yes, I will not lie to you, that is due to my national bias. I am British, and I'm going to side towards an engineered vehicle of my own country, and I completely understand if you fault me for that. Now, understandably, that is a worldwide concern when it comes to military favoritism. It seems to be a very big divide between obviously the East and the West. We have our NATO tanks and we have our Russian armoured tanks, along with some other variants of tanks out there that do come from the Eastern world. Now, recently, I must admit, I've been kind of biting my bottom lip a little bit from people continually bashing Russian armoured fighting vehicles. It does become quite tedious listening to people who really know very little about armoured vehicles and tanks, just outright saying that a tank is terrible, that it's awful, because of some history that they learnt about in the past, or just a couple of articles they've seen on TV. And it's very difficult to try and comprehend where they get this information from and how they come to these conclusions. But today's video is going to be a little bit more specific to the T-14 Armata. Now, if you have been sleeping under a rock, you probably may not be aware that the T-14 is going to hopefully be the mainstay main battle tank of the Russian armoured fighting force. As we are well aware, the T-90, T-80 and T-72s are some of the main battle tanks utilised by the Russian military as of right now, and are all extremely capable tanks. Honestly guys, you can say what you like about these tanks, they are very, very capable vehicles and perform very well in modern day standards. Are they capable of keeping up with some other Western tanks? That is extremely debatable, but that is not what I'm going to be talking to you about today. No, today instead we're going to talk a little bit more about the T-14 Armata's credibility and the fact that really it gets hated on, I think, a little bit too much and for absolutely no justification. I personally feel that the T-14 Armata is an outstanding step away from its old predecessors from the T-72, T-80 and T-90. Take that as you want, but I'm just going to discuss a little bit more about it today to maybe get those who are continually hating on this vehicle and think it is so terrible. Politics aside, okay, I understand there is a lot of controversy in regards to Russian politics and the actual military application of this vehicle, but I'm specifically focusing on its actual specifications as a piece of military fighting equipment. Now, the T-14, from all appearances, seems to kind of abandon the traditional way of designing armoured vehicles. Instead of a relatively simple design, the T-14 is fitted with a number of quite advanced features that really haven't been implemented on most operational tanks elsewhere in Russia. Also, for the first time, the Russian military has actually placed a premium on crew survivability, with the 3 crew members being placed in an armoured pod at the front of the vehicle. Now, you can say what you like, and everybody has their own personal opinion, but this is why I find it very confusing as to why people hate on this vehicle so much. It's not like its predecessors, guys. The Russian military is actually focused on trying to produce a crew survivable vehicle, a vehicle that depends on its crew. Not a vehicle that depends on mass numbers, which really, as let's be honest here, we're aware from the past, is Russian military doctrine was to produce as many vehicles as possible that could get onto the battlefield and swarm and overwhelm other armoured forces. It seems as though Russia has kind of stepped away from that a little bit, and honestly, I commend them for that. I commend them on designing a tank that is primarily trying to defend the crew, and the tank is being worked around the crew. That is really impressive to me. Now, that could be a result of Russia's push to professionalize its military more, and actually maybe down to its declining demographics. That's, you know, it's a completely different tangent, which I'm not going to go on again really on about today. But really what immediately sets the Armata apart from any other operational tank is it has its unmanned turret. Now, everybody again will have their own opinion on this, but an unmanned turret really does, in modern day standards, make complete sense. Now, if we can take these vehicles into a military environment, onto the armoured battlefield, for the most part, tanks should be engaging tanks in hull-down positions. This basically means the vehicle is covered from the hull down and the turret and gun are the only things exposed. With that being said, guys, if a tank is engaging the T-14, most of the armament that is being engaged onto it is only going to be going through the turret and therefore saving a crew member. Yes, the turret is not going to be as armoured as much, mainly for the fact that their crew is not inside there, and therefore it is a lot more, I guess, not to worry about. You know, if there's no crew in there, they don't have to worry as much about its armour protection there because it's been focused on the pod at the front. That, to me, is extremely beneficial because it provides the ability to save crews, well-trained crews, which, again, is debatable in terms of Russian professionalism. I can't really tell if a crew's good or bad just by looking at footage of T-14s driving down the street. However, if a crew is able to continue the firefight after losing the tank, that is a huge, huge positive for this tank. It really is. Also, there is active protection systems that have been really implemented on this vehicle. I mean, again, they've really kind of designed the vehicle primarily around trying to get these systems working integrally with the tank, not things they just clip on. These aren't just little additions like previous tanks like the T90, T80 and such. These are actual systems that have been placed on the vehicle from design, which hopefully will increase its factor of actually being able to defend itself a lot. Another thing that is quite frustrating to listen to over and over again about this vehicle is its unreliability. This is complete bogus. It really is. And this isn't me trying to jump onto the T-14 Armata bandwagon, but it is time to start facing reality. And reality says that the vehicle did not break down on parade. Guys, if you actually did a bit of research in regards to what happened to that T-14 Armata on parade that day, the actual situation happened that the driver on board of the vehicle was not fully trained on its systems and its capabilities of how to drive it, and had actually put what is in tank terms the handbrake on. When he put the handbrake on, the vehicle would literally not go anywhere, which basically means when they tried towing it away, it did not move. The vehicle was just fine. It actually drove off a little later on just fine when they actually figured out what was wrong. This is one of the things and one of the myths that is kind of frustrating to listen to. You know, the T-14 Armata, it broke down on parade. What do you think it's going to do on the battlefield? No, guys. Look, don't just jump onto the hate wagon of these vehicles. Look, Russian politics and military alliances aside, let's look at the equipment itself. Formidably, this tank is doing quite well for itself on paper. It's hard to differentiate what's going to be good on paper and what's good on the battlefield, but for the most part, I'm really liking two of the key factors already that I've just spoken about. Unmanned turret, crew protectability. The next thing that is actually a bit of a drawback though, and I'm not going to give just my positives on this, is going to be with the unmanned turret, it does give a little bit less situational awareness for targeting. This is for the crew because they really have to rely on the sensors that the vehicle has. That's not a huge drawback normally, but it could be a problem if the tank is hit and its sensors or electronics are knocked out. That's something that they do have to take with a pinch of salt when producing an unmanned turret and these, combined pods, is that you are reducing the capability of the crew being able to be aware of what's going on around them on the battlefield, which is very important for a tanker. That might mean even glancing a blow to the turret results in a mission kill where the tank is drivable but unable to shoot back. Now versus the M1A2 SEP V2 or follow-on potential in the future M1A3, it's an open question as to which is a better tank, and as always, I try my best not to go alongside of which is better. However, there is a little bit of discussion that relates to this tank and the Abrams. At the end of the day, they're the top two contenders against one another if, and hopefully never, have to come into combat with one another. The Abrams is proven, it's reliable design and is still currently being upgraded, and soon we hopefully will see the M1A3. The forthcoming M1A3 will be somewhat lighter and more mobile. The US Army also plans to replace the 120mm M256 smoothbore with a lighter version. Now, new guided projectiles may also enable the Abrams to hit targets as far away as potentially 12,000 meters, but Russian tanks, just like the T-14 Armata, are also equipped to fire anti-tank guided missiles via their main gun. It's really a question of who sees who first. Much of how the Armata will actually perform on the battlefield, I find, will probably depend more on how much progress Russia has actually made in developing this tank's sensors and data networks, which are really very, very important. A lot of people just think about the gun and the sights and the drivability. It's not always about that, guys. Tanks need to communicate between one another, whether it be a reconnaissance asset, an air asset, or their own armoured forces going forward. They need to be able to coordinate assaults and attacks, and if they don't have the sensory equipment that can actually do so, it's really going to make it difficult for them to be able to win. The tank that sees the enemy first almost always wins the fight. This is because the first round can go down range, whether it takes out the commanding tank or the scout tank that's providing most of the information back to the rest of the battle group. The Armata is a new design, and it will inevitably have some teething problems as it matures. It is a new tank, guys. Yes, it is not battle proven, and let's hope it doesn't have to be. Further though, there is the question of whether the T-14 can be produced in mass numbers. That's very much a factor given the state of Russia's economy. Ultimately, it could prove to be an extremely formidable weapon if they can mass produce this vehicle. This is another myth that seems to be produced onto the modern day mainstream media, is that the T-14 Armata will not be produced in mass numbers and it will just be in the small amounts that they have produced so far. However, this is not so much the case and is still under speculation as of right now. Clearly, the T-72 fleet and T-80, T-90 fleet will one day be replaced by a modern armoured force. When will that be? Guys, let's be honest here, the T-72 is still rolling to this day in the armoured fighting fleet, so the T-14 Armata could concurrently be very slowly replacing that fleet. We're not talking about a massive outsource of tanks like we do in the Western world, where we buy a package of armour and we try and build it as quickly as we can to make a trawl of armour that replaces a fleet of armour instantaneously. I think Russia's actually taking the smart approach with this. Instead of producing huge bulk loads of tanks to replace huge bulk loads of older tanks, they're doing it in kind of a staggered situation. I think that's probably the smarter move. This allows for the defence budget for this armoured force that's being produced to be monitored very carefully and very precisely as it goes down. Small trawls of armour being produced at a time, they can kind of budget it a little better, and I think it's quite a smart move. Once again, one of the key defining features I think the T-14 Armata that really is setting aside from most other vehicles out there is its real dependability on superior defensive features compared to its predecessors. Notice how I said compared to its predecessors and not NATO tanks. Like a Victorian lady, I guess, the Armata comes with layers of defensive petticoats designed to ward off unwelcome attention. As you've all seen in my previous T-14 Armata video, there is the Afghanit Active Protection System, which boasts both hard and soft kill capabilities, set in motion by 4 or 5 advanced millimeter wavelength radar panels, covering every aspect of the tank, providing warning of approaching projectiles. Soft kill defenses seek to coyly misdirect missiles, and there are also 4 multispectral smoke grenade discharges that can launch countermeasures that not only visually shroud the tank, but also mask the vehicle's infrared signature and block targeting sensors and radars. Now, the tow-guided missile really doesn't care about the latter, but if the operator can't see the tank, there's a better chance of the missile missing, especially if the tank moves. The countermeasures also work in theory against top attack missiles, particularly if they aren't manually guided like the tow. Next up, we have the hard kill element that swats down impertinent missiles that don't take no for an answer. There is speculation in regards to whether or not this system can actually defend against armoured piercing, thin stabilised discarding sabot. It's not something I really want to talk about because at the end of the day, I don't really feel that it's something that we need to focus on. If they're going to be firing main gun armament at this vehicle, I think that's going to be probably the least of their worries because they're already within kill range of multiple vehicles, and I'm sure a system like that is not able to take 6 or 7 armoured piercing sabot fin rounds coming towards it, so we're not going to talk about that though. But I mean, let's be honest, as for top-down attack missiles, the TOW-2B, well, the Afghanit doesn't look like it's really designed to shoot upwards, so that is a kind of a con. However, if the soft and hard kill systems don't really do the trick, then the Armata pretty much explodes. That is, it explodes its relict explosive reactive armour. The Armata's radar times the detonation of an explosive armour brick just before an enemy missile or shell hits it, supposedly well enough in advance to neutralise tandem charge warheads. Is that how things would actually work though? There's really only one way to find out, and as we did find out recently, the rebels did try launch a tow missile versus a T-90 with a direct hit. Very interesting, and it looks like it appeared to have survived the attack, and that's due to its potential older Contact 5 explosive reactive armor, but clearly the Russians are focusing very hard on being able to defend against these systems, which is very, very impressive, guys. So overall guys, I really just wanted to touch base on some of the myths and some of the attributes that this tank really has as a positive, because it is a little tiring to hear about the negativity on such vehicles when really I don't think they're justified. In any event, there is a good chance that turret penetrations of the T-14 will knock out the vehicle's offensive capabilities, but allow the hull with the crew to escape intact. It remains only to be seen how many T-14s will actually be brought into service, and right now only 100 are roughly slated for production. While the number will doubtlessly increase, it's uncertain to what extent Russia will actually attempt to replace its older T-72 BV3 and T-90 tanks. At the end of the day though guys, the T-14 appears to boast some really good defensive measures, particularly against the TOW and the TOW 2 Alpha, but how well they work in combat is really a question even American and Russian manufacturers can only guess. We are purely speculating on its true military capabilities, but going off tech data and as much information as we can. At the end of the day, until these vehicles are placed into true combat scenarios against other tanks or other anti-tank missiles, we can't really take a full judgment on it, which is why making a pre-assessment and a pre-judgment on a vehicle that has really had no proven battle-tested capabilities, it is very unfair to say, this tank sucks, or this tank is the best. That's why I never side towards that game guys, because it just doesn't work out well. My point of today's video is to really try and give the T-14 Armata a little bit more credibility than it's been given as of right now. A lot of people are bashing these vehicles and telling them they're awful, or, telling them that they're amazing. I really think it's something that people need to do a little bit more research on before they start making these decisions that all of a sudden they feel justified due to a couple of misinformation sources and some feedback that came from people who really know very little about the tank. As always the case in matchmaking against other vehicles, you can theorize all you want, but only a real close encounter will reveal the truth of these tanks. Let us hope then that this will never be the case and no tank against the T-14 shall ever have to meet. However, I think if in the situation that this was to be placed into a combat environment, the T-14 Armata would perform very, very well. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video and I hope I clarified a couple of things and my own personal opinion on this tank. I get asked the question probably 10 times a day, which tank do you think's best? What's your thoughts on the T-14 Armata? Even though I've already done a video on it, but here you are. Here is my clarification as to what I think of this tank. I feel that it's been given a lot of negative rapport, and it should not be, and I really do commend the Russian military for designing a tank that steps out of the box of the norm and really focuses on some new key attributes that are sometimes neglected a little bit in regards to crew protection and new capabilities, new technology that is really being pushed out onto its limit with these new defensive measures and such. I hope you enjoyed today's video guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy these videos, I would love it if you could hit the like button, leave me a comment, and if you really wish to support my channel, go check out my Patreon account. It would be much appreciated. I hope to check you out next time on a new video in regards to some sort of armoured fighting vehicle, tank, plane, jet, ship, whatever else it may be, and have a great day. All the best. Bye bye.